Millionaire exposes shocking betrayal. Fiancé discards gift for his son in front of Housekeeper. David stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, an emperor in his own palace, the crystal chandeliers glittering like stars in his sprawling estate. The evening buzzed with laughter and the clinking of fine wine glasses. He could feel the eyes of Chicago's elite on him, measuring him, assessing him. This was meant to be the culmination of his hard work tonight. He would propose to Sarah. Yet a sense of unease gnawed at him. Was he truly ready to take the plunge into an uncertain future with a woman who craved glamour more than substance? "Look at those lovely flowers," Sarah exclaimed, displaying a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She scanned the room, a hawk searching for prey, her world revolving around the next coveted designer dress and social media likes. David pinched his lips together, diverting his gaze to his son, Jake. His heart warmed at the sight of the boy, beaming as he clutched the tailored train set David had gifted him, a hand-picked treasure born from a deep love for his child. As the applause erupted, he basked in their admiration, but when he turned to Sarah, her reaction fell flat. In an instant, she flicked her wrist, dismissingly casting the train set aside as if it were a crumpled piece of paper. The sound echoed through the lavish room, almost drowning out the muffled gasps of their guests. David felt the warmth washing away, replaced with a cold, frantic confusion. What just happened? He thought, his mind racing. He met Rose's gaze across the room. She too seemed taken aback, her eyes wide in disbelief. "David," Sarah's voice cut through his thoughts. "We need to focus on the wedding plans. This isn't about a toy." The word struck him like a blow. Did she truly not see the importance of this moment for their son? His stomach churned. Is this really who I want my son around? Anxiety began to coil in his chest. A fractured reality unfolded before him. The contrast between heartfelt fatherhood and the glittering facade Sarah embodied tore at him. He hesitated, caught in a conflict of loyalty to the son who deserved a nurturing father and a woman whose ambition overshadowed any trace of love he felt. Would he surrender to the siren song of wealth that pulsed through Sarah's world? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. David gripped the bottom of his glass tighter as the room spun with unfamiliar energy. Sarah's voice grew more animated about seating charts and designer florists, completely indifferent to Jake, who fiddled with the dismissed train set in the corner. David's heart sank. Was she really all about the appearance of wealth, or was he simply seeing what he wanted to see? Confusion and betrayal mounted within him. The weight of the realization Sarah's interest in him was less about love and more about social standing pressed down, suffocating his hopes. What was I thinking? He anguished silently, a storm raging inside him. Jake needed his father, the real David, not someone handing over lavish gifts while neglecting emotional connection. As the party continued, laughter felt like a distant echo, the warmth of celebration turning bitter. David stepped away, battling a whirlwind of emotions, veering toward a choice that would define his entire life. As Sarah called out to him, her voice silky but empty, he stood on the precipice of a decision that had enormous consequences. He looked at Jake, who deserved so much more than a facade, who deserved a father willing to stand firm against the dazzling pull of superficial success. The discord between his heart and mind vibrated through him, leaving him poised on the edge of an unfathomable choice. As the chandelier's light flickered above him, David's heart began to race, and he felt a prickling at the back of his mind urging him to act. The noise of the ballroom faded, and amid the glittering gowns and tailored suits, he was effectively alone, cast into a chasm of uncertainty. Was it too late to redefine his world? With resolve hardening in his chest, he decided to step away from the surface-level chaos and confront what mattered most. Jake, the boy who saw magic in the simplest of things, a train set that told stories far grander than any dinner party these socialites could conjure. David made his way toward his son, feeling an instinctual need to protect him from the encroaching emptiness that Sarah seemed to embody. "Hey, buddy," David said, kneeling down to meet Jake's eyes, a twinkle of genuine interest overcoming the remnants of bitterness. "What do you think of your train set? It's the best train ever." Jake grinned, his voice full of excitement. "Look, it goes around the whole track." He pointed animatedly, blissfully unaware of the tension that had just transpired. David took a deep breath, allowing the innocence of his son's joy to wash over him. In this small moment, he found clarity. If he were to be a father, he needed to embody the values he wished to instill: authenticity, conviction, and the courage to step away from a life that felt insincere. Just then, Sarah approached them, her expression wavering between irritation and surprise. "David, don't isolate Jake. We were just discussing the guest list," she interjected, her tone sharp, but David felt a new sense of control surging through him. "You mean the list of people that think they deserve an invitation simply because they wear designer suits?" He shot back, surprising himself with his boldness. The words felt liberating, as if they had broken a spell he didn't know had been cast on him. "Jake needs more than just names on a list, Sarah. He deserves to feel loved, not just placed on display." Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of defensiveness flashing across her face. "David, you're being ridiculous. This is important for our status." "Is it really?" he countered, his anger growing resolute. "What's important is raising him right, showing him the world in a way that transcends what someone wears or how much money they have. Can you understand that?" As he spoke, David felt the weight of the room shifting. Not just his own, but everyone watching. He was no longer just the successful businessman. He was a father in confrontation with his partner's values. For the first time in what felt like ages, he took an honest step toward his inner self, grappling with a truth much deeper than champagne flutes or bridal arrangements. "I've been so focused on impressing people like you, it's blinded me to the fact that I have everything I need right here," he declared, his voice steady, catching Sarah's bewildered gaze. He reached down, encircling Jake in his arms. "You're my priority," he whispered, feeling a well of emotion rise within him. "I want better for us, and if that means saying goodbye to the glittering world you're so enamored with, then I'll do it." The silence stretched out, the repartee hanging in the air like unsent invitations. In that instant, David felt an indescribable urgency blaze within him as he contemplated the implications of his decision. It echoed not just the risk of losing Sarah, but the chance of reclaiming his life not just for himself, but for Jake too. As the laughter faded, replaced by murmurings of intrigue, David faced an unsettling reality. The stakes had never been higher, yet he was ready to confront them. The time had come to face the woman who had seduced him into a gilded cage. What if walking away from superficial allure opened the door to a life filled with authenticity, one where he could rediscover not just who he was, but who he wanted to be? As the tension in the air thickened, David felt an unsettling mix of exhilaration and dread. The ballroom around him pulsated with chatter, people flitting about like moths drawn to the sparkle of the evening. But he had tuned out their superficial laughter, focusing instead on the warmth of Jake tightly wrapped in his embrace. "Can we go?" David asked Jake, whose eyes lit up at the prospect of leaving the party. The boy nodded enthusiastically, urging his father to take him home. The smile on his son's face was a potent reminder of the possibilities awaiting them outside the polished confines of social expectations. "Hold on, buddy," he said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder as he looked around for Sarah. Anxiety gnawed at his stomach, yet he knew the path forward required a confrontation. "I need to have a word with your mom first." He walked towards Sarah, who was now deep in conversation with another couple, her laughter too bright, a stark contrast to the knot tightening in David's chest. She caught sight of him striding in her direction and gave him an assessing look, one that cut through the revelry. "David, dear," she greeted him, her voice artificial yet tempered with a challenge. "Did you find Jake? I thought I'd lost you both." "Jake and I were just enjoying the train set," David replied evenly, locking eyes with her. "I want to talk about our future and what it means for him." Her playful demeanor faltered, a hint of unease creeping into her expression. "Is this really the time? We have guests to attend to." "It's exactly the time," he said firmly. "Our son's happiness means more than any spotlight or social standing." I'm ready to leave this, Sarah. To stop pretending. Her jaw tightened, and he could see the defensive wall rising. You think just walking away will solve everything? This lifestyle is what has allowed you to flourish. It's what you've always wanted. No, he interjected, drawing a breath filled with urgency. What I've always wanted has been blurred by expectations that never served me. The truth is, I've been chasing status instead of purpose. And the person I am now recognizes that, more than anything, I want a life of meaning. For the first time, David felt the depth of the words resonating within him. This was about confronting both Sarah and himself, dismantling the layers of pretense obscuring his vision. He imagined the lives they might build outside the stifling social fabric. What would it feel like to carve out experiences for Jake unfettered by the judgment of others? Sarah's eyes widened slightly, her stony facade cracking, and for a fleeting moment, vulnerability flashed across her features. But what about everything we've worked for? What we've built is a house of cards waiting to tumble, he stated. I'm choosing authenticity, even if that means I have to reconsider everything else. She opened her mouth to argue but faltered, perhaps struck by the sincerity in the tone of his declaration. I will not drag Jake through this emptiness, David continued, asserting his newfound conviction. You have to at least acknowledge what really matters, Sarah. He felt a pang of sadness, not just for what might be lost, but for the myriad dreams they had concocted. But now, a flicker of hope ignited within him. He realized that honoring his path was a chance to redefine life for himself and Jake. David, she began carefully, searching for words. Let us take some time to think. No pressure or pretense, he offered. We can figure out the details later. But for tonight, let us remember what's truly valuable. As he turned away slightly, his heart thudded, each beat a reminder of the path now open before him. He took Jake's hand and led him toward the exit, each step resonating with the weight of possibility. But how would he navigate the resistance that was bound to come from Sarah? Could he truly redefine their lives without causing irreparable rifts? The question lingered in the air, an unspoken tension fueling his determination to forge ahead into uncharted territory. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, David's heart raced not just from the confrontation, but from what lay ahead. The world beyond the ballroom felt expansive, a stark contrast to the claustrophobic ambience he had just escaped. The streetlights illuminated their path, and Jake swung their clasped hands in innocent delight, blissfully unaware of the life's complexities unfolding around him. Dad, can we build a fort when we get home? Jake's question jolted David from his thoughts. The sincerity in his son's eyes washed over him like a balm. This was what mattered now, moments of pure joy, unfettered by the expectations that had once ruled his life. Absolutely, buddy. We'll build the biggest fort ever, David replied, a smile breaking through his worry. The thought of crafting a world where imagination could flourish was exhilarating. It wasn't just a fort. It was a symbol of his commitment to nurturing a genuine life for Jake. Back at home, as Jake bounded off to gather blankets and pillows, David found himself sitting at the kitchen table, grappling with the reality of his decisions. Each swirl of thoughts brought him to a new realization about the sacrifices he had made, not for his happiness, but for an illusion that had kept him shackled. He poured himself a glass of water, contemplating the weight of the future. How would he manage the conflict with Sarah? The evenings spent strategizing how to upkeep their social facade suddenly felt burdensome. No more itineraries filled with mind-numbing obligations. What he craved was spontaneity and authenticity. With Jake's joyful laughter echoing in the background, a tiny flicker of guilt swept through him as he thought about Sarah. They had built their lives together with dreams, with plans, and yet those very dreams seemed to trap them like a gilded cage. The fear of the unknown clawed at his determination. Could he withstand the fallout? The fort took shape as Jake draped blankets and furniture in a chaotic masterpiece. David's hands became better equipped through teamwork, and he realized that he thrived on this creativity, rekindling an urge long buried beneath the pressure of maintaining appearances. Each pillow and each sheet represented a departure from the life he once led, one marked by sacrifice and conformity. "Dad, come help," Jake shouted, pulling him further into this makeshift world. David followed, embedding himself into the fabric of the fort, embodying not just the physical structure, but the emotional one as well. Here, within this sanctuary, he felt a resurgence of clarity. "Jake, what do you think makes a good fort?" he asked, genuinely curious. "A good fort has space to play and secrets to hide in," Jake replied, eyes bright with excitement. David smiled, considering the implications. Maybe his life needed similar qualities: space for joy, freedom to explore, and perhaps even a few secrets worth keeping. But how much of Sarah's vision would he need to dismantle for this? The thought was unsettling, yet necessary. He would need to engage with Sarah, confront the painful truths that had come to light. Could she find a way to embrace a new narrative, or was the rift too wide to bridge? Would a shared commitment to transparency replace the hiding? "Jake, how about we have a sleepover in our fort?" David called out, and his son, bursting with joy, clambered over to him, in their cozy enclave. David felt the confidence and strength building within him. The conversation with Sarah would not be easy, but he had unearthed the purpose he sought. The path was treacherous, but with Jake's laughter invigorating him, David was ready to face the challenges ahead. As he adjusted a pillow, setting the final piece in place, a thought struck him. Would Sarah see the possibility too? Would she want to join him in this quest for authenticity? The moment of truth loomed closer, and he knew he could no longer delay reaching out. He needed courage, a fundamental element to tackle what had become inevitable. David took a deep breath, believing that discovering a different life was possible. But could he invite Sarah into this awakening? The answer lay ahead, in their upcoming conversation, waiting to be unearthed. The morning light spilled through the curtains, casting delicate patterns amidst the fort's chaotic interior. David blinked awake, a soft weight resting on his chest. Jake, tired from their late-night adventure, nestled against him, still wrapped in a cocoon of blankets. David inhaled the scent of childhood fresh fabric and a faint hint of sweat. These moments, even in their simplicity, made his heart swell. But with this tender scene came the undeniable weight of the reality he needed to confront. As he extricated himself carefully from the embrace without waking Jake, the enormity of his impending conversation with Sarah sunk in. Could he articulate the discontent that had festered over the years? Doubts about their shared life tugged at him like a persistent chill. He needed to approach this with clarity, not bitterness. The kitchen was bright and inviting, everything meticulously in its place. Sarah would be up soon, the hum of her coffee grinder ushering her into the day. David stood at the counter, hands gripping the edges tightly as he battled the demons of hesitation. Would the woman who had once been his greatest ally now feel like an adversary? He recalled a moment at the beginning of their relationship, a shared dream of a family built on love and mutual support. Somehow, he had lost sight of that, swept away by the current of expectations. The veneer of perfection they had created felt more like a prison now, one that stifled honest dialogue. As he poured himself a cup of coffee, the rich aroma filled his senses, but it was the thought of confronting Sarah that had him on edge. Would she hear him? Would she embrace this journey towards truth with him? The excitement coursing through him mingled with dread. Jake stirred, blinking sleep from his eyes. "Dad, can we have pancakes for breakfast?" His voice was a sweet reminder of the innocence that lingered in their lives, a necessity David held tightly onto amidst the turmoil. "Of course, buddy," he replied, allowing a smile to break through his tension. Pancake preparation became a moment of distraction, a pocket of floating normalcy before the storm. As he flipped the golden discs, he felt emboldened to navigate the increasingly complex relationship he had with Sarah. After breakfast, when they were settled, he would finally lay everything bare. The thought of their conversation made him acutely aware of the stakes. In their years together, he had avoided difficult discussions, choosing complacency over confrontation, a practice that was starting to betray him. But now, familiarity with his own feelings had forged a new resolve. Later, Jake's laughter mingled with the spatula tapping against the pan, infusing the room with life. David couldn't help but smile at the boy who thrived on unstructured play, who found joy in the simplest things. It was vital he relay that spirit to Sarah. They needed to weave creativity back into their shared fabric. "Can we build another fort today, Dad?" Jake asked, mouthful of pancake. The request felt like a lifeline, a reminder that their relationship still had unfettered joy. "Absolutely. Maybe we can invite Mom to join us." David saw Jake's enthusiasm swerve at the mention of Sarah. A flicker of hope ignited within him. Could that bridging of their worlds, both playful and serious, lead to something transformative? As breakfast wrapped up and Jake raced to finish, David felt time pooling around him, each second stretching and pressing heavy with what needed to come next. He would have to broach the topic with the woman he loved and yet felt so distant from. Would they build something new together, or would it merely crumble like their old fort? The tension crackled, heating the air around him. Every step drew him closer to the cliff edge of honesty, a profound transformation on the horizon, yet fear loomed like a shadow. He had to start this conversation, one way or another. Taking a deep breath, David steeled himself. Today was to be pivotal, a moment of reckoning. He could feel the pressure mounting, the determination to dive into the truth. Pulling at his core, the reassurance of greater authenticity lay just beneath the surface, waiting for his courageous plunge. With every ounce of his being, David was ready to step forward, the taste of the unknown igniting his resolve. The moment had finally come. He could no longer delay. He was about to confront not just Sarah, but the illusions they clung to, spurred on by the hope that together they might discover a brighter narrative. Would Sarah be willing to join him in building a new foundation, or was the path too riddled with disillusionment? The answer awaited him, ready to intertwine with his own evolution. The clock ticked unapologetically in the background, each second a reminder of the moment David was both dreading and yearning for. After breakfast, he heard the telltale sound of Sarah's footsteps, a soft thud against the floor that made his heart race with both affection and trepidation. Would today mark a turning point, or simply deepen the chasm between them? He cleared his throat, mindful of Jake still buzzing around the kitchen, blissfully unaware of the emotional storm brewing. David glanced at his son, a beautiful explosion of joy and energy, and felt the weight of responsibility pressing down harder. Jake's laughter was infectious, but it couldn't shield David from the truth that was simmering, threatening to boil over. "Hey, Sarah," he called out as she appeared, rubbing her eyes against the morning light. "Can we chat for a minute?" The words felt clumsy, caught halfway between casual and urgent, as if they hung in the air, emphasizing the gravity of the moment. "Sure, give me a second," she replied, her tone light, but her eyes searched his face. As though sensing the tension lurking beneath she poured herself a cup of coffee. David felt a tightening in his chest. The sweet aroma that had once signified comfort now carried an undertone of unease, a harbinger of the looming conversation. The kitchen, usually a space of shared warmth, felt like a battleground, one where arguments and defenses could erupt without warning. "Can it wait till after we finish with Jake's fort?" she asked, a playful smile creeping in. That smile, once a beacon of connection, now felt like a barrier. He couldn't postpone this any longer. "No, it can't. It's important," he said, firming up his resolve. The hesitation he had carried for so long was dissolving, replaced by a sharp urgency that pushed him forward. He had to confront the reality between them, a reality steeped in misunderstandings and unexpressed needs. "All right," Sarah replied, her expression shifting. The warmth drained slightly, replaced with a cautious curiosity. "What's on your mind?" David inhaled deeply, searching for the right words. "I feel like we've drifted apart," he confessed, the admission tasting both bitter and liberating. He watched for Sarah's reaction, her face etched in thoughtful contemplation, but not closing off. He hoped this would signal the opening he needed. "What do you mean?" she probed, the gentle edge of concern threading through her voice. "I mean, we used to dream together. About our lives, what we wanted for ourselves and for Jake. But now, it feels like we're living parallel lives, completely disconnected. I miss that honesty between us," he laid bare, the conviction in his voice bolstered by his desire for change. Sarah paused, her brow furrowing slightly. "Is this about yesterday? The party invitation?" The memory struck him. When the invite had come, he had felt that familiar tremor of unease, a reminder of how disconnected they both had become, attending events with smiles while the truth of their discontent simmered underneath the surface. "It's not just yesterday, it's everything leading up to it," he replied, frustration creeping in. "We don't talk about the hard stuff, Sarah?" Her eyes softened but held the weight of years. "I thought we were managing okay." Is it that bad? David felt the urge to recoil from the honesty, but the drive to forge a new connection overpowered his doubts. It feels overwhelming when I think of everything else we've left unsaid. The years we spent just skimming the surface, avoiding what we really want, both for us and for Jake. A heavy silence filled the kitchen. David dared to hope that they were edging closer to honesty. It stirred an uncomfortable but necessary energy in him. He had always been one to avoid conflict. Yet here he was, willing to lay it all bare, to risk everything for authenticity. Maybe we both need to be honest with ourselves, David, Sarah admitted, a hint of vulnerability threading through her words. As the conversation deepened, he felt a flicker of what had been lost momentary clarity that peered through the clouds of their discontent. But just as quickly, shadows crept back in. Could this moment, this tentative admission of vulnerability, lead to something genuine, or was it already too late? The tension rose again. But this time it felt like the stirring of potential, a chance to build something more meaningful than what they had painstakingly constructed over the years. David had plunged into uncertainty, but Sarah's eyes reflected a glimmer of hope. Yet somewhere in the back of his mind, a nagging voice whispered, was this just the first step towards something bigger, or the precursor to a confrontation neither was truly ready for? As they both stood at this critical junction, the answer hung on the precipice of their next exchange, urging them forward into the unknown. As the quiet tension settled in the kitchen, David felt the subtle shifts in the air, the weight of words yet unspoken. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a golden glow that felt like an omen, illuminating the rift that had grown between them. He fought an internal battle, wrestling with the desire to bridge that gap and the fear of the confrontation it might ignite. "Do you think we can go back to dreaming together?" he asked, his voice vulnerable yet tinged with a touch of desperation. It was a question steeped in uncertainty, but it was the reality he longed for. Sarah's brow furrowed again, her eyes searching his. "I don't know, David. It's not as simple as it used to be, is it? We have responsibilities now." With those words, an almost tangible fracture echoed in the space between them. He wanted to push further, to challenge her understanding of their life together, but he paused. We've become so focused on the pieces of our lives that we've forgotten the bigger picture. Hasn't that become more suffocating than liberating? Her gaze flickered. He noted the shift. The wall she had built around herself was starting to crack. "Maybe," she replied softly. "But what do we do about it?" David pressed, driven by the urgency of the moment. The idea that they might be skirting around the truth challenged him, pushed him to confront his own hesitations. As Sarah weighed her response, Jake burst through the doorway, bright-eyed and animated. The sight of their son, so full of life, momentarily distracted David, offering a brief relief from the heavier conversation. Yet, it also reminded him of what they stood to lose if they didn't address their issues. "Dad, can we build the fort now?" Jake's innocent exuberance sliced through the tension, beckoning him to reprioritize, but also forcing David to question if they would always defer to their child's needs at the expense of their own. "Can it wait just a moment, buddy?" David asked, not wanting to stifle his son's excitement, but realizing this was the critical juncture he couldn't avoid. He turned back to Sarah, grounding himself in the moment before asking, "What do you think it's going to take for us to reconnect? Do you even want that?" Her silence was deafening, and David could sense the weight of her internal conflict, mirroring his own. He could see the wheels turning in her mind. Perhaps she too was trapped in the comfort of routines, years of little unspoken grievances festering just beneath the surface. "I'm willing to try, but it's going to take work, David. Are you sure you're ready for that? I don't want this to just surface again when we're uncomfortable." More than ever, he asserted, the conviction growing. "I want to put in the effort. Not just for us, but for Jake too. He deserves to see us as a united front, happy together." Sarah's expression softened slightly, but he could tell she was still hesitant, protective of her heart. "I want that too, but it's hard. We've been coasting, David, so removed from each other." David nodded, a new realization dawning upon him. "Then let us start small. Let us set aside time once a week for just us. No distractions, just conversations. We can use that time to be honest." As Sarah considered his proposal, he felt a rush of empowerment. He was taking steps, making decisions that aligned with his values. This attempt to reconnect was bolstered not just by a hope for rekindling their relationship, but a deeper understanding of himself, his ability to confront challenges rather than avoid them. "Okay," she finally said, her voice steadying. "Let us try that. But we need to be prepared to dig into the uncomfortable truths, David. They're there, lurking beneath the surface." A mix of relief and apprehension washed over him. This was far from a guarantee that they would heal all wounds, but it was a commitment, a tiny light breaking through the darkness. The conversation left David with a sense of renewal, a driving force behind his desire to transform the uncertainty into action. He chose honesty over silence, and while the future remained uncertain, his resolve grew stronger. Yet, as they moved past the initial conversation and turned toward Jake, the underlying tension loomed. Was this truly a path toward reconciliation or merely a last-ditch effort before unspoken truths threatened to unravel them completely? Suddenly, David caught a glimmer of movement from the corner of his eye. Sarah's phone buzzed on the countertop, a message that seemed to pull her focus away abruptly. The worry prickled at him. Perhaps there were still mysteries lurking that could sabotage their fragile progress. "What is it?" he asked, his voice tense, the anticipation filling the space around them once more. Sarah hesitated briefly before reaching for her phone, the expression on her face clouding with concern. The uncertainty settled back into the room like a heavy fog, amplifying the need for clarity both about their relationship and the implications of whatever awaited on that screen. David observed Sarah as she stared at her phone, every muscle in his body tensing at the sight of her furrowed brow and the way her fingers hesitated over the screen. It was as if the fragile peace they had temporarily brokered was hanging by a thread, threatened by whatever message had disrupted their moment. The air thickened with unspoken fears, and David's heart raced. "Is everything okay?" he urged, the question spilling out before he could temper it with casualness. Deep down, he recognized that this interruption was more than a simple notification. It felt like a test. Finally, Sarah glanced up, her eyes unfocused, as if she were wrestling with the choice between reality and avoidance. "It's work," she said, her tone clipped, a red flag waving in the distance. "Work," David echoed. The word held a multitude of meanings, most of which contributed to their growing division. He tightened his jaw, deliberating whether to push further. "You know, we need to prioritize our time together. Whatever it is can likely wait." In that moment, an uncharacteristic boldness surged within him. The allure of reverting to old roles, those of the passive partner who surrendered his needs to maintain the peace, was fading. He wanted more. He needed to confront her distraction if they were ever going to make real progress. "David," she sighed, rolling her eyes before refocusing on her phone. "I can't just ignore this. It's important. More important than the conversation we just started." His voice rose slightly, infused with both frustration and a plea for acknowledgement. She remained locked on her screen, the rhythm of their shared time slipping through his fingers like grains of sand. He longed for her commitment. With each passing second, their bond felt thinner, more fragile. "I thought we were working on reconnecting," he added, his resolve now laced with desperation. Finally, Sarah put the phone down, visibly irritated. "It's difficult, David. I'm trying to find a balance. There are deadlines. I know we've set aside time, but the world continues to move. Responsibilities don't disappear just because we want them to." There it was, the complex web of life pressing in around them. David's mind churned beneath the surface as he processed her words, truths woven with utility and obligation. They lived in the margin of urgency, sometimes mistaking it for purpose. With a new clarity, he realized that building a bridge required not only commitment, but vulnerability. "I understand there's a lot on your plate," he began, his voice steadying. "But if we keep letting those responsibilities cloud our personal lives, we'll lose sight of each other. When was the last time we genuinely paused together?" This time, she looked him directly in the eye. He could see her wall soften ever so slightly as she contemplated his words. "So what do we do?" she asked, genuine interest replacing frustration. David allowed hope to seep into his words. "We take control. We schedule time, but make it sacred. If work can't wait, we create the space. Even if it's just 15 minutes a day. Time where it's just us, no distractions, just pure connection." "That's ambitious," she replied, her tone lightening but uncertainty still lurking behind her smile. And what if that turns into another item on our to-do list? His heart twisted at the irony. It can't be that. We have to allow ourselves to be present and not just check boxes. This matters because we matter. Pursuing this isn't about obligation. It's about confronting the void between us. Sarah's expression held a flicker of admiration, mixed with estrangement. Was he stepping into a position he wasn't ready for, or was this a necessary moment of growth? Still tethered to her phone, her internal struggle seemed to reflect his. He knew she was contemplating the reality of their commitments. Will you give it a chance? He pressed, the pause stretched, almost suffocating. Okay, I'll try, she finally conceded, though it sounded more like an oath than a promise. Relief washed over him, but that relief was quickly tempered by lingering doubts. Were they confronting their problems, or simply postponing the inevitable? Yet right in the midst of his triumph, the phone buzzed again, this time more insistent. David's heart dropped, an unwelcome sense of dread mingling with hope. The momentary connection they forged felt precariously balanced, and the uncertainty of her work loomed like a dark shadow. What now? He wondered out loud, the tension seeping back into the room. The weight of those words hung heavy. Perhaps this was just the beginning of uncovering deeper issues neither had truly acknowledged. With a resigned sigh, Sarah picked up her phone yet again, the screen's illumination casting an eerie light on her face. As she tilted her head down to read, David's stomach knotted. Would this be the catalyst for either resolution or destruction? His resolve began to waver. Tell me it's not bad news, he ventured. As she stared at the screen, a flicker of panic briefly crossed her features. The world around them halted, caught in the breathless tension of what lay ahead. What other complexities lurked behind their fragile peace? And would they emerge as a united front or reveal deeper cracks? The answers waited just beyond the edges of the screen. This moment felt seismic. The time had come to face the consequences of their choices, and David wondered if they had the courage to confront what lay hidden beneath the surface. The phone vibrated in Sarah's hand, a lifeline to her professional world that David could neither decipher nor embrace. He watched her fingers hover above the screen, the moment their connection had achieved slowly dissolving under the weight of urgency. He needed clarity. More than anything, he craved genuine communication, a step into uncharted territory that demanded authenticity over avoidance. David, she said tentatively, a hint of vulnerability emerging in her voice as she switched her gaze from the phone to his face. I'm just trying to juggle it all. Sometimes it feels like my life is a series of plates spinning, and I'm terrified of dropping one. He understood the frantic nature of her world, the relentless deadlines, the unyielding expectations. Each reminder of responsibility clawed at her, driving a wedge deeper into the space between them. And yet, David had felt the distortion from this constant barrage of duties as a call to action, not just passivity. You don't have to carry it alone, he replied, softening the edges of his tone. Let us figure this out together. She hesitated, brow furrowed. It was a look he had seen before, the burden of unaired grievances and unmet needs weighing heavily on her. Finally, she set the phone down again, her fingers lingering on the screen as if to assure herself it would still be there when she returned to it. What if I end up feeling overwhelmed? Then we reassess. But letting this overwhelm you to the point of ignoring us isn't an option. Each word struck with intention, as though they were stakes thrust into the ground marking the boundary of their unwavering commitment to connect. Their gazes locked, and David felt a shift within himself, one that echoed with defiance against old patterns. It wasn't just about addressing the present. It was about altering the lens through which they viewed their relationship. If Sarah could acknowledge her struggles, he could boast of his decision to confront his fears. They both had ingrained notions about emotional confrontation that needed demolition. What do we need to do? She asked, a hesitant resolve taking root in her tone. David leaned forward, the very action a testament to his willingness to confront the tension head-on. We carve out that time. But it has to be our time, enforced. No phones, no distractions. Just you and me. A flicker of hope crossed her face, but beneath it lingered skepticism. And if I end up needing to work through our time? Then we make a plan together, he countered, leaning deeper into the conversation. We will prioritize it. If work calls, we talk about what we can shift. We have to design our emotional space as carefully as we design our schedules. What is the point of achieving everything professionally if we're crumbling personally? Suddenly, her walls seemed to fracture, allowing a glimmer of shared vulnerability. I want to be better at balancing everything, David. I don't want this to end in resentment. Then let us not let it, he encouraged, feeling the urgency of the discussion shift toward an anticipatory energy. They were crafting a cooperative pact, a lifeboat amidst the tumultuous ocean of their responsibilities. This is our first step towards not just reconnecting, but growing both together and individually. Uncertainty flickered across her face, but was quickly quelled by the determination etched in his features. They were both on the precipice of significant change, staring into the abyss of the unknown together. As he spoke, David felt an unfamiliar sensation burgeon within him, resolve not simply to confront Sarah's distractions, but to excavate the foundation of their relationship. It felt monumental, like laying down the gauntlet against complacency. But that phone had buzzed again. They both flinched, the deafening urgency piercing the moment of burgeoning hope. Sarah's eyes darted back toward it, and with that familiar expression of anxiety returning, David's stomach fell. Maybe I should just check, she started, but he pointedly interrupted. Sarah, we just made a commitment to this moment. Let us honor it. Let us face it together. His heart raced with the fear that perhaps this was a mistake, pushing against the current when they could simply retreat to safety. Yet, that was exactly the problem. They'd been retreating together for too long. For a split second, Sarah hesitated, her gaze darting from the phone to David, caught in an internal battle between her duties and her desire for connection. With a slight shake of her head, she turned her full attention to him. You're right, she whispered, but the phone silently screamed for her attention from the table. In that charged atmosphere, David felt every muscle in his body tense for what came next. Would this moment validate his bold push for change, or would it plunge them back into the realm of avoidance? Before either could voice their thoughts, there was a knock at the door, an unexpected disruption that could either introduce a crucial turning point or sever the thread of possibility they worked so hard to weave. Who could that be? David frowned, anxiety shifting from Sarah's phone to the threshold of their home. He knew it could lead to distractions, unwelcome surprises. The questions loomed large in his mind. Was this the universe testing their resolve, or revealing deeper complexities yet to be faced? As he exchanged a glance with Sarah, a sense of urgency surged within him. What awaited them beyond that door could change everything. David's heart raced as he absorbed the implications of the knock echoing through their kitchen. The weight of the recent conversation hung heavily in the air, yet here was an interruption, a moment that might either fracture the fragile progress they had made or bolster it. Should I get it? He asked, glancing at Sarah. She nodded, her brow furrowing as though she sensed the tension creeping back in. They had only just begun to touch the deeper layers of their relationship, yet uncertainty lingered as he opened the door to his surprise. It was Rosa, their trusted housekeeper and confidant. Her presence brought a hint of familiarity, yet the tension brewing between David and Sarah was palpable. Rosa's warm smile faltered as she caught sight of their expressions, and her eyes darted between the couple, sensing the undercurrent that defined their atmosphere. Is everything all right? She asked gently, her eyes reflecting genuine concern. Everything's fine, David replied, a touch too quickly. We were just having a conversation. And you came at just the right time, he added, trying to recapture the moment. He needed an ally, someone who could perhaps help bridge their re-emerging distance. Rosa looked at them, made an astute observation, and said, conversations sometimes go beyond the words spoken. They require attentiveness and connection. I can see there is something significant at play here. David felt a swell of gratitude for Rosa. Her straightforwardness was a breath of fresh air amidst their escape from pretense. Perhaps this was the moment they needed to solidify their new commitment to each other. Rosa gestured toward a paper bag at her feet. I brought you both some pastries. Thought it might help to sweeten the air. Sarah chuckled lightly, the siege of tension slightly diminishing. Thanks, Rosa. How did you know we needed this? I always have a knack for timing, she said playfully, placing the bag on the counter. But all jokes aside, I know I can provide an open ear if need be. At that, David felt emboldened. Actually, maybe we could all share a moment together. Rosa, What do you think makes for a strong relationship? The question caught her off guard. Oh wow, that's a big one. I think it's all about communication. Truly hearing each other, being open to vulnerability. Right. But it's so easy to lose sight of that, David interjected. I mean, how often do we let our distractions keep us from facing each other? Exactly, Rosa affirmed, her brows raising incrementally. It's about identifying what you each value and being willing to share that with one another, even when it's hard. David turned to Sarah, a blend of hope and determination infusing his gaze. What if we made our promise to communicate clearer right now? Like the commitment we were just discussing. Sarah had gone quiet, her expression deepening into contemplation. Then, softly, she replied, I think that's a great idea. Let us create a framework, Rosa suggested. Set aside time each week, no phones or distractions. Just be present with one another. David felt a rush of exhilaration. Yes, and we can include specific discussions about what we need as individuals. That way we're not just filling the slots with pleasantries. That sounds good, Sarah murmured, the shift in her tone encouraging David's burgeoning hope. Great. We can create a safe space for each other to express whatever it is we need, Rosa said, her voice laced with optimism. The tension in the room began to unravel, shifting into a brighter atmosphere as they all shared small bites of the pastries Rosa had brought. With every morsel, David felt a tangible transformation, an acknowledgement that they were indeed on the right path. David, Sarah's voice broke the light-hearted moment, and he turned to her, feeling trepidation mixed with excitement. I appreciate this. I've felt lost for a while now, and I believe tackling our issues together might actually help, as you said. The sincerity on her face anchored him. And me as well. I'm ready to invest in understanding our needs. With Rosa there to witness the moment, the couple reaffirmed their commitment to a brighter, deeper connection. The conversation they'd begun was no longer fraught with fear. Rather, it was a shared exploration that would enrich the foundation they were building, littered with the shards of sacred honesty and real commitment. As they finished the pastries, laughter filled the room, chasing away the remnants of their earlier tension. David felt an unwavering pride swell within him. He was no longer simply giving into acquiescence. He was carving out a space for authenticity, proudly advocating for his family's emotional landscape. Later, as Rosa said her goodbyes, David knew the journey ahead would not always be easy. Still, the first steps toward true connection had been taken. The promise of clarity, understanding, and compassion became the tangible gems binding them forward. David turned to Sarah, entwining fingers. Can we finally build that fort now? Her smile brightened the room far more than any chandelier. Let us build one that embodies everything we hope to create together. And in that moment, the weight of old expectations began to lift as they stepped toward a future sparked with promise and renewal. The air felt lighter, alive with potential, as they transformed the remnants of their unresolved past into a vibrant tapestry one thick with love, truth, and dedication. This was a beginning, not an end, a concrete achievement of facing imperfections and embarking on a journey toward a shared future launched on the wings of honesty. Now that you have witnessed this epic transformation, make your move. Subscribe immediately to the channel and don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm because it makes a profound difference. Comment below your thoughts and reactions. Let's get the conversation started. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share the powerful message of personal growth.